Go. So yeah, there we go. I think. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Voron Live. If you guys can hear me. Oh wait, apparently double audio. One second. Can you guys still hear me, or is the echo going?
I can hear you.
Well, yeah.
He's talking to the YouTube people.
Yeah, YouTube people. All good? Score. So, without further ado and without further technical issues, welcome to Voron Live. I'm Doc, for those of you who have missed us for previous ones. And this is kind of our just every so often at completely and totally random surprise, here's something cool. So we wanted to kind of do this one to touch on, it's the end of the year and 2021 has been a real good year for us. So we wanted to touch on that. We wanted to maybe put some Christmas presents under the tree too, and then go from there. But hey, RCF, actually let's go around and introduce ourselves first, and then we'll dive in. So first and foremost, starting at the left, so the guy over on the other side of me that looks like Kenny is Bad Noob. So say hello.
Hello.
And then we've got RCF to my right. Well,
Hi, everybody.
we've got Steve, the guy who was responsible for the Trident release down there-ish.
Hey,
And
everyone.
then we've got Wile E. Coyote right there.
Hi.
So, yeah. Welcome to Voron Live. No, my name is not Johnny Knoxville. So, Max, take it away,
All right.
sir.
2021, kind of a big year for us. Excuse me. Early morning still. So we kind of kicked the year off with Voron 0.1 release. That's been actually super popular. The improvements that Nimcree did for that release were very compelling, I should say. Direct drive toolheads being one of them. I think people have been asking for that for quite a while at this point. So getting that into like an OEM stock release has been motivating to some people to actually build one. And that with addition to many of the kits available for this printer at this point, kind of propelled us towards the numbers that we kind of see coming up at this point. The other Voron release that we did was Trident, and Steve was responsible for that for the most part. Actually, all of it was pretty much Steve. He drove that baby home. It's a very compelling printer as well. It's a lot of improvements that the Voron 1 line has been missing. And it was challenging to make what we wanted to do work with just printed parts, because a lot of the 3-point level beds are done with like CNC parts and a whole bunch of money thrown at the problem. So to do that successfully with printed parts is actually quite an achievement, I believe. And it just improves the prints that are coming out of the your V1 printer. And it is a direct upgrade for all of the people running 1.8 right now. So that's kind of jives with the forever upgrade path that is the Voron ecosystem. So all of that combined, along with the 2.4 kits available again, even though there's some serious problems with shipping, overseas shipping, and shipping to other countries. We are a global entity effectively at this point. We still managed to clock in over 4,000 Voron serials, which is
Wow.
insane. We were way past 4,000 mark at this point. and they just keep rolling in. And that's just all the Vorons that people actually like made a video and posted it. So we don't know how many Vorons there are out there. Not everybody feels compelled to get a serial, so we don't know how many Vorons are out there. I guess we could like go ask people that are selling kits how many they've sold. But honestly, I'm scared. So the audience for these streams, the audience on Discord, the audience on Reddit, more on that later, has grown so much that it feels like every little thing that we release from here onward will just have more and more people consuming it. So it just puts more onus on all of us combined as the dev team to release something that's good and stable and indicative of the quality that you expect from the Voron at this point. So it's challenging, scary. It's scary. Let's just go with scary. Speaking of this Reddit, we have acquired Voron Design subreddit, and we were able to split off Voron Core XY for just serial duty. So people that want to go get their serial numbers for Vorons can go on Voron Core XY and fill out their serial request. And then Voron Design subreddit is just for humans interacting with other humans on Voron about the topic of Voron, and it's been fantastically successful. I've actually loved jumping back in there and answering questions and having discussions. More of a long form discussion that's actually probably searchable somewhere, but it's slower paced than Discord, but it is valuable. Voron started on Reddit, and I think it's important to keep the Reddit community going because it is a valuable community. Basically, it's one more outlet that's available for people to ask questions or share things about their Vorons or just kind of show off cool prints. In addition to all of that madness, we've had a couple of big name YouTubers jump on board and say, "Oh, I want to build a Voron because it's popular and it will be good for the algorithm." So the first one was Stefan from the CNC Kitchen. I want to thank him for not tearing apart the printer in his review. But I mean, he built one of the kits. He had a pretty good experience, I believe, and it has, I believe, contributed to those 4,000 serials that we saw this year. And then, last but not least, Thomas Soundlander, the YouTuber basically for any kind of the RepRap 3D printer stuff. I kind of came up into 3D printing world watching his videos about like the basics of 3D printing and stuff. And I think a lot of us have as well. His videos have been kind of like the link guy. Every time somebody comes up and says, "Oh, I want X," somebody inevitably drops a link to his earlier videos about how does this work, how does that work, how does RepRap work. So him building a Voron, having a good time of it, was actually kind of surreal to watch, but also kind of super cool. So I want to thank both of those guys for building Vorons and sharing their experiences with us. And unless I'm forgetting something, I think that kind of wraps up 2021. Well, to this point. We have more things. Doc, take it away.
Yep. So, as I alluded to with Christmas presents, we have more to share, I believe, and I'm probably remembering wrong. So, Steve, do you want to show it off? And then, Wiley, do you want to talk about what Steve is showing off?
Sure.
All right.
Sounds good.
So, Steve, take it away, good sir.
Am I on the main screen?
You are.
Okay. And there we go.
Awesome. So, Chris, Wiley,
Yeah.
you want to tell them what they are looking at?
What you're looking at is an evolution of our Afterburner toolhead that basically Bad Noob started on. How long ago was it, Noob?
18 months.
18 months ago. So Bad Noob started on his version of Afterburner because he wasn't quite happy with the cooling performance. And he was at version 30 at the point where I kind of came back to Voron. I took a bit of a break and came back. I had built a 2.1, I think in 2018, sounds about right. And then I took some time off. I popped in every once in a while to see what was going on, and then back because I wanted to build the 2.4. I had all the parts and assemblies built for 2.2, but it was very complicated, and 2.4 seemed so much more simple. So I came back and hopped on just to see what was what and what parts should go here and what parts should go where and get recommendations. And I saw all the cool things that were going on, and one of them was the airflow work that Bad Noob was working in. And we had some conversations about it, and I kind of wanted to help out because the CAD was a little bit a little rough, but I mean, I do CAD for a living. I do 3D design work. I've been doing it for 16 years now. So I work for an engineering firm here, and I wanted to help out. So he's good with the CFD and the science and thought process behind all that, and I wanted to try and help out with just cleaning the CAD up a little bit, and that's kind of where it started. And then it sort of got to talking about how he wasn't sure if maybe it would make it to the mainstream because I don't know, the aesthetic wasn't quite Voron or whatever, and I just thought, man, maybe I can help with this. So let's dig in and see what we can do with it and work with it and pretty it up a little bit and get it out there. And I got involved at last March or March of this year, and it's been basically a back and forth of minds meeting and group dev sessions and me and Bad Noob coordinating back and forth as far as what he needs for airflow. He needs to move some things here and there, and I was saying, well, I can't give you that space. I need a little more room here. And he goes, okay, let me see what I can do. And then hours and hours and hours of simulations later, he comes back and says, yep, okay, that's good. So essentially, what we've come up with is a little more faceted version of the tool head. It's, I don't know, it's kind of it's a very different aesthetic from what we usually have, but the low poly thing has always kind of fascinated me. So I was just trying to see how I could make it different and see how I could fit a giant fan in there. And the 5015 that it uses is no small task to get it to fit. So I was trying to figure out any way possible to basically try and cram it in this little thing. So that's basically where we've ended up with. It's been a long road. And one of the things that I've always sort of not liked about 3D printing is having to like go in and watch your first layer with a flashlight. And I just, while I was working on this, I kept thinking to myself, man, there's got to be a way I can cram some lights in here to look and see what you're doing. And so you can just leave the flashlight in the junk drawer or the camping bin. And it took some work, and it's taken a lot of adjustments and fine tuning, but I managed to cram in two little RGB LEDs in there. I'm not sure if you can see if it's focused or not, but they make a huge difference as far as being able to see what you're printing. I generally don't even turn the case lights on in my printer anymore. So it's one of those quality of life improvements that just makes me really happy every time I look at it. But yeah, anyways, I thought sort of take you guys through some CAD and kind of show you the evolution. So I'm going to share my screen here. So this is where we started. This is ABBN30. This is Bad Noob's creation. This is, I just have the ears of the fan sticking out because they haven't been modified. But this is one of the issues of this fan is that you have to trim these little knobs off, which isn't a big deal, but that's the only way we can kind of make it fit. I spun this fan around every single way, and the only way to get it pointing the right way with the airflow was to trim the ears. But yeah, so there was a retaining spring that held the fan in, and then Bad Noob went in here and did a whole bunch of magic with CFD work to optimize the airflow. So that's where it started. And then this is kind of, where are we here? This is kind of the evolution of where I was going. I generally add material and then slice it away to try and make it the way I want. But we were working with it, and I kind of like, hexagons are like the Voron sort of thing. So I was trying to see if I could make it look a little more hexagonal at the top.
Hexagons are the best of guns.
The hexagons are the bestagons. And so this is one of the more refined versions that we had. It still had the printed spring, and basically what I had done was put an LED in for the logo and thought, man, that's so cool. That's kind of where I was like, okay, we're done. All right, ship it. And then Bad Noob wanted to take it back because he wanted to take the STL back, or the STP file back, the 3D model, and he wanted to do some more. CFD on it because I had sort of shuffled things around with the fan, and we wanted to leave room in the back there if we needed to. So he took it back at this point and basically gave it back to me after probably 2 months of design work, something like that. And he'd made a couple changes, shuffled some things around, and then it was basically my job to sort of make it all fit. I think this is still, yeah, so this was me playing with the ducts. So I was trying to match the ducts with the front profile to make it sort of a seamless sort of look. So I wanted to make sure that we had enough clearance to our idlers. So that's what this model's all about. And then I started on a cable cover, which some people think it was too big and obnoxious, but I wanted to keep with the theme because the old Afterburner cover just didn't really seem to blend in with the aesthetic, as you can see. It also was never big enough. I could never get all my wires and stuff in there, so I basically just haven't been running a cover for a while. And here's the birth of V2. So this is after Bad Noob gave it back to me. So on the left here is what I gave him and in the state that it was. And then on the right here is kind of a gradual evolution of what he gave me back. So one of the things that he had done was in here, for my version, I had little printed springs for the fans because there's no real way to mount the fans or bolt them in like we used to on our old tool heads. So last thing I wanted was rattling fans. And so I had these little, this idea for little printed retaining springs that would hold it in place and keep it from vibrating. So Noob actually took that idea and got rid of this printed spring over here and put it in there. So that worked really good. But yeah, I don't know. I also, I wanted to take the poly aesthetic and sort of work it backwards to the rear of the tool head because it just kind of seems strange to not have it matched. Like that's what it looked like, and you can't really see it except anywhere other than the side. But it just didn't really. It wasn't a finished product for me. It didn't really sit to where I wanted it to be. So I was starting to chisel away and work at that rear tool head. And here's Revo Voron, or the Revo. Anyways, so basically what I did was I went in here and started cutting away and made some nice wiring channels. They have little printed tab supports. The little red things are what you trim away after it's printed so that you can just weave your wires in around here. And then I have an LED carrier. This is the old version of it, but it clips in a little single pixel RGBW LED. But that's also been changed. Many things have been changed since then. When we were making changes last night. So there's lots going on here. But I continued with these little printed springs and cable keepers and everything. And this is where the LEDs go. And this is one of the first versions of the LEDs. So they just slot right in there. And then you have to pass the cable through a port, which was a pain in the ass, and I didn't really want to do it. But it was kind of the only way I could make it work with how things fit through here. We had very little clearance to the bolt holes. We had very little clearance to anywhere else. So it was kind of just how it was at that time. And then there's the tool head here. We have to put faces on everything. If I see a face, it's getting eyebrows for sure. So that's definitely one of the fun things. But anyway, I'll bring you to where we are now. So this is kind of the finished product as far as finished as it gets at this point. I think there's still going to be a couple of small print tweaks and whatnot, but this is where we are. What do we show here? Right. So I'll take you through the fan face. You can see the geometry is quite complicated and has required a lot of work to make it printable and smooth and sliced nicely. The way that these ducts were created was to optimize airflow, which optimized airflow and optimized printability don't necessarily match. So there's been a lot of work to try and make those print well and still flow well and not screw up all the hard work that Bad Noob put in optimizing those. So yeah, one of the things that I was asked for when I asked some people to start beta testing was basically to make this channel open, to make wiring it a lot easier and swapping out wires and moving wires. And also there's people that don't necessarily like to solder or know how to solder or can solder. So it opens up the possibility for people to buy a pre-made harness from vendors, which is a huge bonus. And one of those things that I think that now that we have a larger community and a lot more people that aren't as mechanically savvy or technically savvy, it kind of gets rid of one of those pain in the butt roadblocks that hold people up or prevent people from being able to do cool and fun things. So yeah, this has been hundreds of hours of work and design and iterations. My STLs on my printers say that I'm at version 21, but I think that's actually a lie. I think that's only version 21 from when I got it back from Bad Noob. Yeah. And then we also have some more goodies, but I'm gonna let RCF talk about that. I had just a couple more pictures I wanted to show. If I'm boring you, please let me know.
No, keep going.
I was doing this through OBS, but we had some technical difficulties this morning, and now things are just not going all that smoothly. Oh yeah. So, I wanted to show you the printability stuff that I was talking about with Super Slicer. So on the right here, we had an older version, and then on the left here, we have a newer version. So one of the things that was, oh, sorry, I mixed that up. They were the other way. Or were they? Right, here we go. Okay. So on the right here, you can talk about, or you can see what I'm talking about as far as printability issues. So this blue area here is all a bridge overhang, and bridge overhangs work pretty well as long as they're straight. So drawing a curve in midair with no support doesn't really work, and the slicer doesn't know to not make curves. It just slices and follows a path. So these are some of the issues that would come up when trying to print these out is you get these curvy little lines, and then it has nothing to really connect to or hold here, and so it sags and droops, and you get big loops of filament in the path. So I think I spent 2 days trying to get this sorted out and working better, because working with these complex lofted geometry, it's called, working with these complex lofts, the software doesn't really like that, and it basically glitches out and explodes, or spends 10 minutes thinking about doing something, and then at the end of it goes, nope, sorry, error, can't do it. So that was quite a challenge, but I mean, it's taken a lot of work, but it's definitely worth it.
Plus, Chris had to work with me, which meant that, every time he wanted to make a change, I'd say, no, you can't change that. That's vital. That's a vital curve. And so he had to go through that with me as well.
Yeah. So yeah, it's different, because I generally in my day job I design things on my own, and I know all of the little nuances and why things are the way they are and things to look out for. And there's been a few times where I've been caught where I'm like, Steve will ask me, "Oh, hey, Wiley, can you maybe make a little more clearance for the wiring for this part?" And I go, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And I move one face and I spit out the STL and I go, "Here you go." And then he prints it and he goes, "Why is there a hole right here?" I don't know. That sucks. I'm sorry about that. I will fix it. And it's just because there's things that I'm just not familiar with, or things that I didn't create, so I don't necessarily know all of those little things. But we've tried to optimize it as far as printability goes, so that even if you don't have a Voron, that's been tuned for hours and hours and hours, that you can still hopefully print these parts, because I know they are complicated, but there's no way to get this much stuff into a tiny little package without making it complicated. So yeah, anyway. What else? I kind of wanted to show a few pictures of going down memory lane. Give me 1 second. We're kind of winging it here this morning. This was one of the first versions, in air quotes, that I'm gonna say that that I came up with when I first started out on this project. And I was thinking to myself, there's no way I can cram this fan into this thing and get enough airflow and still make it look good. So I started scouring the entire internet for fans, and basically, oh, this isn't going to do what I want it to do. Hang on 1 second. Can I just share my desktop?
I think so.
If you're brave enough.
How does one do that? Screen. There we go. All right. So I started scouring the internet looking for fans. Is it not working?
No, we
It
can
is
see it.
It's working.
I didn't love the idea of having to modify the 5015 fan, but it seems like that range of fans and them being, us needing to be 24 volts or there just isn't a lot out there. There's tons of stuff with 12 volts, but they don't put out enough airflow, and they're mostly just designed for cooling small video cards and other things like that. So we scoured the internet looking for all sorts of stuff. I believe one of us even contacted Delta. Bad Noob contacted Delta fans to see if they would make us some special fans. And I don't know where that went. I think it kind of
Well,
didn't go
they
where we
wanted to. All we had to do is give them 11 grand for tooling and a minimum order of 5,000 and at I think $15 a piece. And
I'll get right
they
on
do it
that.
for us. Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah. Explained
considering
we're not a
Voron
company.
isn't a company and we don't have any cash flow, that basically killed that. So
We don't have any
we
money.
scoured the internet. There basically is no fan out there that I could find that would work well. So basically just shoehorned the 5015 in there and went from there. So I think this was the very beginning of sort of the tapered shape here that I like at the top with the upper bolts. This is the start of Gummy Burner, as it was affectionately called. And then we had Punk Rock Burner. I was trying to do anything to sort of get some information or inspiration from like actually an afterburner on a jet, and they have these vanes that sort of direct thrust, and I don't know. It's one of those things where you're like, I mean, I'll try it. Does it look good? No. So it is what it is. And then I was comparing sort of one of the very first things that we were sort of happy with in the group compared to our old toolhead. It's weird to say old toolhead, but yeah.
It's 2 years old now.
Yeah, fair enough.
Original Afterburner was released in 2019.
Is that it?
Yep.
I don't know. Keeping with the
January
hexagons
6th,
and angles and
2020, I
stuff, I thought
thought.
it'd be kind of cool if we could maybe turn it this circular port for the intake of the fan into a hexagon. So I started experimenting with basically turning a hexagon and sloping it into a circle so that it didn't screw the airflow up too much. And it sort of evolved. And Bad Noob kept saying, well, can you make it bigger? Can you make it bigger? Can you make it bigger? And I was like, okay. So it finally evolved to that point. And then what else do we have here? Here was my first idea for chucking an LED in the logo. I thought it was going to be so cool. It's this little printed clear carrier that you snap the LED into. I was super thrilled about it. What else? I had most of this organized, but this morning was quite a shuffle. Yeah, I don't know what that is. Anyway, moving on to the lights. So, can we see this?
Yep.
I can
The
see it,
video?
but it's not moving or anything on your stream.
That's
No.
strange. All right. Anyways, so I had this idea of putting lights in here, and we were kind of at the point where StealthBurner was baked, and we were like, okay, good enough. And I was like, oh man, I really want to try and get these in here. And so I chucked this photo out as a concept saying, man, I think I can do it. And basically I tried it and it worked. And it worked well. And it made me really happy. So I just went with it. Who did we lose? Oh, we lost Steve.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
He's back.
I think I'm pretty much there. I don't know. None of my videos are working, so that's fine. Here's the newer version of the LED carrier. So it's got a little spring-loaded clip here where it presses against the slot, and then this little round PCB LED basically pushes past this. This pivots here, and it springs in and locks it in place. I have a quick little animation for the video, but none of this stuff's working for animation, so it is what it is, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, will it work? Maybe it'll work. Hey.
It does
That
work.
works.
Ooh,
Hey.
nifty.
Oh man, something did work.
Yay.
All right. I think with that, I'm pretty much wrapped up the design end of things. As I said, we're nearing completion, but I think there's still a few places that we can polish it up and improve it. But I think for the most part, I'm very happy with it, and got some good feedback from some of the other users for the quality of life improvements for the cable management and things like that. So yeah, I hope everybody likes it. I'm very happy with it.
You forgot to mention what we're calling it.
Oh yeah. So it started out as Afterburner, and then it kind of looked like a gummy bear, so we went with Gummy Burner, and then it kind of took on a lot more stealthy appearance, and we ended up sort of coining it internally as StealthBurner. So I wasn't sure if that was going to be the code name, but it ended up sticking. So we're calling it StealthBurner.
So
I'm good with that.
Yep.
With that,
So
I think we're going. Are we going to RCF or back to Adam?
I think we should hop over to Bad Noob because you touched on a lot of CFD stuff. I think he should
Well,
he
it's
should
fresh.
get a chance to talk about CFD stuff while it's fresh. Yeah.
Cool.
For sure.
All right. So, 18 months ago, I fired up my first roll of PLA and I had a jam. And I was a little upset about it. And eventually, Eddie and a bunch of other guys directed me to this VOC channel where we started talking about airflow. And that, luckily, we had a pandemic. And I had a lot of free time on my hands. So spent a lot of time learning CFD. My main work is in mathematical modeling of engineering systems. CFD was just a half step away from there. So let's take a look. When you're looking at CFD, though, what we're looking at here is the airflow within the unit. This large disk is air that comes in, then there's the fan, and then this is actually the tool head here. And what we're looking at is some of the things that we did inside StealthBurner to improve the airflow. So let me zoom in here. I'll show you a couple of things. When you've got a fan rotating, the airflow comes off of it at an angle. It comes off of it as a rotating vortex. And so we have these veins in here, which are hard to see in this model, but maybe I can just bring this up a little bit. You can see some of these cutouts in here in this model to like this. That's an actual vein inside the model that will help direct the airflow, straighten it out, and push it into the heatsink itself, which is back here. And then you've got your heatsink, and then you've got your exit ducts in the back. So that was one thing that we wanted to solve, is the jamming problem. By having this, turn off these particle traces so you can see it a little better. Okay, so by having these little walls inside the unit, it really helps straighten out the airflow, increases the static pressure, and directs it in through the heatsink, where it does all the work. The other problem that we had, that I had a lot, was melting. I had ducts in Afterburner that would melt after a day. I had ducts that would stick together for a while, and then then a month later they would melt. And what we figured out was that most of the melting is occurring right at the beginning of the print. The first 5 layers, or first 3 layers, depending on your settings, you have the part fan is completely off. There's no airflow down there, and you've got really hot plastic. You've got a really hot bed. Everything is, and then you've also got the hot end itself, which is producing a lot of radiant heat. ABS does not move heat very well at all. It's a great insulator, in fact. So this heat would just build up on the duct. And so I thought, if I can get a little bit of airflow down, just a little bit of airflow to come down from the hot end ducts down into the part cooling ducts. Not enough to really affect the print, but enough to cool down the plastic of the hot end. And so that's what we started doing with ABBN, probably 23 or so. And it worked out pretty well. So this model here is actually showing the part fan is off completely, and you just have the hot end fan going, and you can see the airflow kind of vortexing down this tube. Let's see if I can bring that in a little bit better. Vortexing down this tube into the part cooling duct, and there it floods and starts cooling everything off. So that's what's going on the hot end side. And then people started saying, hey, you need more cooling flow for the part duct. So I started looking at that. Part duct, the 4020 is great, but it doesn't have enough push. Everyone wanted to move to a 5015 in the group, and so eventually we figured out a way to get that 5015 to fit, and then we had to figure out a way to divide the airflow from the 5015, and it's difficult to do because so what you're looking at here is the rotating disc of a 5015, and you've got the this is the part flow that comes down off of both sides. And as you increase the fan speed, the flow is going to bias towards the left side. And if you decrease the speed, it biases towards the right side. So we had to redesign an entirely new duct. That's why they look a little funky. And this is a difficult thing to do. I don't know of another group that could have done this, because you need someone who understands the DFD side, which would be me, but you also need someone that understands the printability side and the CAD side, which would be Wiley. The project would not have completed. We wouldn't have gotten to a release without Wiley on this, because I just couldn't get the printability right. I was just learning CAD myself. So we come down here and we look at, we have this divider, and then we look at the flow as we get down to the nozzle. You notice that the flow kind of biases front to back. Let me show you what the stock Afterburner looked like. Now I have to switch my. There we go. Okay, so here we're looking at the stock Afterburner, and it's pretty good. The aim is fantastic. This isn't actually their CFD. This is a CFD I did trying to reverse engineer it. Everything's good except for one thing. You see the high velocity here is 7 meters a second, and then it goes down to 0 is a cool blue color. As these two flows meet right at the nozzle, you have an area of high pressure and low flow. It basically cancels each other out. And this is the area where flow is the most important. That's the area that you really need to cool. And so we went from this model back to this model. And let's see if I can flip over. Yes, okay. So the flow kind of biases forward and then comes through and pushes against it. And you can't see the values here, but we get up to about twice the speed right at the nozzle that the original Afterburner does. That doesn't sound like a lot, but the cooling capacity of air increases with the square of the velocity. So twice the velocity is 4 times the cooling capacity, which is pretty good. Let's see, what else do I have here? Okay, so yes, we have better distribution for left and right. We have more power. We have a bigger fan. We have a lot better part cooling. We have ducts that no longer melt. And we have hot ends that no longer jam. So 18 months. Can't wait to see what the next 18 bring. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Bad Noob.
Now, can you hear me? YouTube, can you hear me now? Wait for it. Okay, there we go. Anyways, so we spent all this time making StealthBurner. We focused on airflow. We focused on getting the fundamentals right. We need to make sure that all the air is moving all the right places. And then we focused on making it look really, really awesome. And then we focused on making it so you could look at what you're printing without breaking out a flashlight from your junk drawer. But then we've got Clockwork, which was a phenomenal extruder, but it's kind of blocky and didn't really kind of match that whole aesthetic. So we'd be kind of silly not to take a look at that too. So Max, aren't extruders your happy place?
It is my happy place. So I don't have an extruder with me because I'm at my mother-in-law's house for the holidays, and my Clockwork 2, which is what we're calling it, is mounted to a printer that's 200 miles that way. But Steve is going to do, I'm going to do the hand wavy thing, and Steve is going to show things. So first and foremost, we needed to kind of redo the extruder to be in the aesthetic of the StealthBurner, so the front plate matches what's going on. The party on the front needs to match the business on the back. So that was the starting point, effectively. Getting the curves off the front plate and kind of like working into a model that works with the rest of the printer, basically. One of the ideas that I actually stole from Bad Noob was offsetting Clockwork to a side. What we ended up with is a huge amount of space because of 50-15 fan is physically bigger. We have a whole bunch more space now to route all the cables. And Steve, if you want to demo the door. I was really never happy with thank you. I was really never happy with the side cable cover thing. The original thought on Afterburner way back in 2019 was that we get all the wires bundled into, there it is. We get all the wires put into the tool head itself, and then we're not going to have wires. And then lo and behold, that didn't happen. So having all of that fully integrated into the tool head is actually super nice. So Clockwork 2 is effectively the same direct drive extruder that V0.1 uses. So we kind of borrowed the Nemo 14 fan. Hi. Okay. My child. She's as old as Voron, actually. So we kind of borrowed the Nemo 14 motor, which with a pinion. So that gives us, there's Willie's work. There it is. We borrowed the Nemo 14 motor with a pinion on it, which it's a smaller pinion than you get on Nemo 17 Pancake, and it makes our gear ratio go up to around 5 to 1, which just allows you to have a lighter motor, but without sacrificing the torque on the extruder. And yeah, a whole bunch more. And then after that design was done and kind of like the component layout was finished, we addressed some of the issues that people were having. The not enough beef on the guidler pivot. The guidler pivot bolt has like 4 different points of contact at this point. It goes through the front. There's an additional piece that it connects to, and then goes all the way into the motor plate. So that's nice. We did a lot of work on. I did a lot of work on the guidler, the latch shuttle, the little piece that actually goes in and engages with the latch to close it, to try to make the guidler removable effectively without sacrificing the usability effectively. Yep, there it is. And then we had to put ridges around the feed wheel. What we've noticed is you mostly use the feed wheel in a problem of running out of filament. So you still have access to your feed wheel to like feed the filament out of the hot end without tearing everything apart, because you can no longer get to it. But it is protected. The wires that are going in there are protected by the little ridges, and so far we haven't had any problems with that. And I think that's about it. The last thing we did, which was about last week, was increase the size of the door, because Chris decided to use non-spec. Willie decided to use non-spec connectors and couldn't get all the connectors in. It was a little tight. I'll have to admit, it was a little tight. But actually, yeah, one more thing I did. The entirety of the meat of it, where the filament path and the gears connecting, that whole thing was basically redone from scratch. I took a lot of lessons from Bondtech, actually, of just looking at their extruders and how their filament paths are constructed. and how my filament pass from original Clockwork wasn't optimal. So I think for the first time in the history of Voron extruders, you can actually feed filament into it without fighting it. So finally, I have achieved something that I've been trying to do for many years at this point. The paths have been optimized to the point where I was able to just cut a filament straight, no angle or anything, and then feed it all the way into the extruder, and it didn't fight me or didn't get bind up. Basically, like a lot easier extruder to live with, effectively. So, again, I didn't want to just release something that's, a facelift effectively. I wanted to actually change some fundamentals of the extruder to make it a better extruder. I think it looks kind of nice. I kind of took a lot of cues from Willie's work on it.
So
I think that's about it.
yeah, that's Clockwork too. So I'm going to bounce back so you can see all of it. And one thing we didn't mention, we talked about the overarching cable cover up top, but you'd still, in the old system, have that heater wire and thermistor wire running down from the top to the side. So not anymore. So I'm going to bounce to Steve so you can see it in real life. That unit you see right there that he's pointing to is a cable cover specifically for just hiding your heater and thermistor wires. And so what that does is that right there fits in there, and it's integrated into the motor mount, or I'm sorry, the hot end mount, and is a dedicated wire hide just for that. So when built, you will see no wires. It will all be just the tool head hanging out there, and not wire spaghetti or even just that one set of wires running down the side. So just one more nice feature that goes into all of this to, once again, have it be a quality of life improvement of what we really put out in the universe with Afterburner. We've just taken it another step further. So I guess then the question is, when? When is this coming? As I said at the beginning, Christmas presents. So the files, we're doing some final polishing, very honestly. There's still one or two things that we want to make sure print well, work well, and function well. So more polishing is happening, but the goal is to release all of these before Christmas. So by the time we get to Christmas, you will have the stuff you need to print and build all of this, up to and including, hopefully, fingers crossed, a manual too. So we're not just going to release STLs out in the universe and hope, you watch this stream and rewind it and look for certain little parts on how certain things fit 2.0 what. So anyways, by Christmas, you will get a BOM, a manual, and printable parts, or STLs to print, I should say, so you can install it. This is a drop-in compatible for the current carriage system, so there's no new carriage you need to print. And yes, for everyone who asked, Clicky Probe will drop right in on this. Any inductive probe that fits in the current carriage setup, so say you've got a Super Penda probe in there, or a Venda as I like to call them, in there, and you've got the pinion mount for that. Still works. Your Omron, what's the red one called? Photech. Your Omron, your Photech, your Panasonics, those all drop in as well. So if it fits currently, it'll fit going forwards. So all of that said, it should still work. Now, I can't promise toolhead board compatibility with everything because there's multiple toolhead boards out there that we don't have our hands on them. We couldn't test them all. So, but as with any other release, the CAD files will come with this on top of the STL files so that designers can ensure that they can adapt either the geometry of the Clockwork board to fit in there, or the Clockwork printed part so they can fit their board in there, or they can adjust what their toolhead board may look like in the future. But once again, the focus was improving quality of life and functionality and aesthetics. I mean, you can't have one without all the others, at least in our mind and ethos. But with that, anyone else wants to talk about? Anything?
You actually mentioned, you mentioned carriage. So the X carriage frame did change.
Oops.
So
Ever so
it's
slightly.
based off of Trident. It's based off of Trident, which is kind of like the standard we're working towards. But the one thing that I changed on the carriage is you no longer get the bolts coming in from the back. As somebody who's fought the chain being there to get those bolts out, to get the extruder out. The extruder actually bolts from the front now. So
yeah,
good quality of life improvement there. That means that there is a change to the X carriage. You will need a MGN12 rail on your X to do that. There is an update coming to 2.4 to convert the X to basically the Trident X. That's what Steve's been chopping at for quite a while at this point. I don't want to out him because he's now going to have a billion DMs. RIP your inbox. And then the last thing we'd probably need to do before the release is updated carriages for Legacy and Switchwire to kind of like fold them into the same thing. But yes, as you mentioned, the probe mounts did not change whatsoever. It's the same. If it works on Trident, it works on. If your probe setup works on Trident, it'll work on this carriage. It was important for us to kind of button this up and work as a group or a small group to prepare this surprise for the community. But it's also Afterburner or StealthBurner at this point. And it's the piece of Voron that everybody knows more than the rest of our printers because there are so many modifications putting that tool head on other printers. There are Afterburner mods for Enders and CR10s and God knows what else. I think there's a Prusa one too. But it's the tool head is the face of Voron, and changing that is not a light decision, but I feel like it's something that needs to be done because, again, 2-year-old design and the amount of improvements that have been put into StealthBurner, it just overall massively better tool head. And I think, all of us standardizing, all of the printer models standardizing on that tool head is a good thing for the community altogether going forward. Nimgria, we're really sorry. V0, we'll get back to you. It's going to be great.
We've talked about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're working on it.
The only other things that I wanted to mention were the wiring for the LEDs. I would highly recommend no larger than probably 24 gauge wire. The soldering can be a little bit tricky, but it's much easier with thin gauge wire. I just built this out of an old USB cable. And I believe it had 26 or 28 gauge wire, but for the amount of current that we're pushing through those wires, that's totally fine. So if you don't have anything like that, you could cut up an old USB cable or an old Ethernet cable, or if you want to just order some wires, that would work. Steve made it work with what size wire was that, Steve? 24 gauge silicone?
No, 28 gauge silicone
28 gauge.
is a pretty good fit. 24 gauge PTFE is about the same, but the PTFE 24 gauge PTFE wire is a little too stiff, I think.
Okay.
So I wouldn't go that heavy.
Yeah, so that's definitely a consideration because if the wires are too fat, then they aren't going to fit in this lower channel down here. So that could be an issue. The only other thing is this tool head needs M3 by 50 millimeter bolts for the two bottom ones. So we capture, instead of having separate bolts now for the tool head, this also didn't. So instead of having lower bolts for the tool head part and for the actual fan cover, they're all just captured by the same bolts now. But those are M3 by 50s, and I don't think we've spec'd them on any other printer before, so people may or may not have them laying around. RIP global stock of 50 millimeter bolts.
It's a new addition to the Voron parts bin.
And also these these little these are the single pixels. Is it focusing?
Kind of.
They're everywhere. You can get them anywhere. They come in all different thicknesses of PCBs, as I found out through development. I would highly recommend getting the RGBW ones instead of just the RGB ones. The RGB ones work just fine, but the RGBW ones give you a little bit cleaner white light for the nozzle, and it also gives you one extra LED to add a little bit of brightness. But I don't even run mine at full brightness. I think I run them at 80%. And for the logo LED, I think I run it at like 20% or maybe 10%, because otherwise it's too bright.
Yeah,
So
from the hardware perspective, they're effectively knockoff NeoPixels on a single board. Or at least how that's how the software sees it. It's the same chipset.
yeah, it's the RGBWs are an SK6812 or something, I think, and the RGBs are WS2812. But that doesn't make any difference to the end user. Still wire the same.
Yeah, you use the NeoPixel support in Clipper, and then you're off to the races.
We might have some macros to add to release, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
We're all using them, so yes, we should probably package that up too.
So on that, like for different operations, I set my machine up to have the logo change color depending on the status of what it's doing. So heating up, it's orange. While it's printing, it's red. If it's cleaning, it's blue, bluey green. If it's gantry leveling or whatever. So those are kind of fun things that we can do with the LEDs. So I just hope everybody likes them.
So, yeah, apparently there was more to add that I had forgotten about, which is on me.
Oh, it's all good. Just popped into my head.
But now I think we covered everything, right? Bueller?
I think so.
Well,
I can't think of anything else.
with that, it's been a fun afternoon, as always. I keep saying we need to do these more frequently, and then we never do. Kind of like my mom saying I need to call more often, and I promise I will, and life happens. But with that, as I said, this will be released before Christmas, and you'll have everything you need to start moving with this and go from there. So, with that, this is StealthBurner. So, Merry early Christmas, everyone.
Yay!
Bye. And